M's medical people at music festivals. What are your most crazy stories? Some people next to us are Fisher's Labor Day weekend shows, not a fest, but a bunch of people camp outside the venue, had this bike pump. They fitted the end with a little cup and were blasting coke up their noses with it. We heard M jokingly say, you know those people that party too hard and get taken away by medics. That's totally gonna be us. Well, it was them at like 4 AM Sunday morning. IDK. I think that's freaking hilarious. Freaking works. A guy jumped from the nosebleed section and then yelled, what's my favorite type of fruit pie, and then we took him away because of being so high on drugs and having a concussion. Bazlides 2015 in Hampton, Virginia. This girl was running around the venue topless, mercilessly crushing a water bottle, which was empty, in her first, running up to people and shoving it in the faces screaming, does anybody need any water? Her pupils were black as night, and she was grinding her teeth to a pulp. It was terrifying. I worked campus M's in college and got paid to watch T-Pain perform. He had them turn the bass up so much ceiling tiles fell onto the basketball court where the concert was being held. Later in the show, when girls started throwing their bras on stage, he grabbed a handful and started humping them. Also was on duty for 303, and before the show 2 guys walked by. I legitimately thought from the look and smell that they were homeless, but apparently it was the band. Later on they threw a box of pasta and some chicken wings into the crowd. LOL, T-Pain is a cool dude. I work at Bonnaroo and got to talk to him for a little bit. I always thought you EMT guys had it rough, much harder work than what I have to do. Got called to an unresponsive person in a stream a few years back. He was almost K-hold and high on GHB with his head dangling off the end of an inflatable couch just touching the top of the water. Seriously, if he fell off he would have been a goner. As a harm reduction based first aid team, we brought him to a semi-coherent level of consciousness and explained why it was a bad idea to pass out in the water, and he got quite upset, which led to one of my favorite quotes from a festival ever. Bro, it's a rave, and this is how I party, man. A few inched away from drowning apparently. Since he was awake, we brought him and the Zouch to shore and bid him good day, then got called to the girl who had OD'd on GHB in the middle of the stream and was barely breathing and totally hypothermic. We worked on her for hours and she made it. Point is, don't do dissociatives around water, kids. Unless it's a rave and that's just how you party. Ketamine and water definitely do not mix. So easy to drown. I'm an EMTB. I worked an anime convention nearby, and let me preface this by saying that every neckbeard weirdo on the face of the earth showed up to this thing along with a slew of every other weird drug using person you could imagine. They had an entire hotel rented out and the entire convention center for this 4-day event. It was 11:30 PM on the first day when we got a call for a possible seizure in one of the hotel rooms rented out for the convention. We show up to a girl who is butt naked strapped to the bed via leather bindings, as well as a giant black metal vibrating dildo who is actively seizing. The girl is seizing as well as the dildo inside her. Her sexual partner called us and bailed. He neglected to remove the dildo as well about a dozen other various size phallic objects. My partner worked on getting an IV in her while I untied her and removed the massive dildo from her. We got some versed in her which stops seizing and she was okay, but absolutely nuts how we found her. TL. Doctor found girl at anime convention with a massive vibrating dildo in her who was actively seizing. Burning Man 2017 was my first, and probably last, burn. A dude that was hanging around my friends sprinted, vaulted, dodged his way past numerous security professionals and managed to run into the fire. He died as tens of thousands watched. 2017 was a bad year for traumatic deaths accidents at BM. Not an M's, but on the Woodstock album, there's an announcement. Bugsy, please report to the medical tent. I know that Bugsy, he was a family friend. Whoever was in charge of the medical tent heard about Bugsy, and he spent a lot of time helping diagnose symptoms and talking people down from bad trips. Bugsy was the go-to guy in town that vetted every single drug that entered that town. Until Bugsy gave the okay, nobody would touch anything. If Bugsy said it was not legit, not only did no kids use the stuff, but the older guys would run that dealer out of town for trying to hurt people. We all looked after each other in those days. Good times. That is freaking awesome. Every festival needs a Bugsy. I'm just a festival goer, but shout out to all the 110-pound white girls that take too much of something within the first 2 hours of the festival day one and get escorted out on a stretcher. It's really hard to know your limit beyond zero at 110 pounds. Been there. This is a very famous copy pasta, at least in the music festival scene. At Echo Project I watched a Wookette giving birth during the Jizza set. I was just peeking on some 2C. People were trying to get medical help, but they hadn't arrived. Some other Wookette claimed to be a midwife and was coaching the woman through this. Her Wook man is standing there shirtless and spun like top, just making these weird sounds while he is crushing his beer can and spraying Coors Light all over everyone. He looked really anxious about the whole thing, grabbing his face and just making grunts and stuff. The baby's head starts to crown and the medics still haven't arrived. This is where it gets crazy. It was so freaking dusty out there and the baby and all the surrounding fluids were immediately muddified by the blowing dirt. I mean, it's freaking gross. All of a sudden, this freaking kid, probably 19 or 20, in his oversized neon, flat brim LRG hat, runs up yelling welcome to the party B before he blows a huge plume of smoke right in the baby's face, while the umbilical cord is still attached and crap. The smell was unmistakable. This baby had just been deemstered. He must have pulled the hit from a bong. BC it was monstrous. The surrounding crowd dropped their jaws, and someone tackled the kid as he starts to run away. He didn't make it more than 10 feet and he was probably blasting off about now. The mom is clutching the dirty baby and trying to calm it, though, strangely, the baby was not crying. Tripping balls I guess. And while the dude is getting screamed at, the dad suddenly pounces into action. He jumps on the dude and starts smashing said Bisco kid's face with a crushed up beer can, of which he seemingly just can't let go. The Bisco kid is kicking and trying to roll out of it and the Wook dad grabs the kid's hair one hand. He finally let the can go and shoves his other hand halfway inside the guy's mouth. He is pulling his mouth open and rips his cheek open. Repeat. Rips his freaking cheek open. There is blood everywhere and the dude lets out this Braveheart-like scream as he gets pulled off by the folks around him. Blood all over Bisco kid's face, shirt and formerly fresh flat breezy. The cops medics arrived about that time and took over the situation. Crap was crazy as heck. Welcome to the party, B. Waiting in line for a shower. One of the showers went out of order because a woman was blasted on something and was rubbing herself raw. I didn't know that's what was going on till a health and safety volunteer I'm friends with told me later. I did Glastonbury a few weeks after qualifying as a paramedic. First night shift was with a local GP as my driver. He'd been to every Glastonbury, a true gentleman, and suggested watching the sunrise from the stone circle. The next night I worked with a small town EMT who was frightened of people that were high and wanted to take everyone to hospital if they'd so much as been around drugs in the last 72 hours as they might be spiked and OD. Best patient was a girl so wasted on ketamine she'd not noticed her ankle was badly broken. She'd sprained it on Friday night, took it easy on Saturday but dosed up with ket on Saturday night, to the point she was dancing on it. She got a ride to hospital. Sounds like Ket Girl just did the anesthetist job for them. Not an EMT, but at Lollapalooza last year I saw this girl climb a tree and was jumping on a branch like 20+ feet up. Then she just laid down and straddled the branch, arms and legs hanging off, thinking she finally passed out, only to surprise us when she came back to life and started jumping on this branch again. Then quite expectedly, it broke and she fell, hit the ground hard. I don't really know what happened after that because my vantage point wasn't great, but I do remember seeing her and thinking that she was on some kind of trip. Girl straight reverted centuries of intellectual evolution. Obligatory not an EMS. At Download Festival this year in the UK, one of our group headbanged so hard they gave themselves a bleed on the brain and had to have an operation. Unfortunately, the symptoms were very similar to just being insanely drunk, and after spending 3 hours passed out in the festival village with the paramedics, the rest of the group being quizzed about anything we had taken. 100% nothing but alcohol as far as we were aware, and 2 days in the first aid tent. It wasn't until their vision started blurring and words slurring that they went for a CT. EMT here. This literally happened last week. I was working a rave and I had a patient who took a lot of MDMA. I mean a lot. He ended up being escorted up to our first aid room by security. When he got poked for a blood sugar, he ended up on the floor kicking his feet and flailing his arms around. He was being super combative with us to the point where he wrapped his arms around my neck at one point. My partner at the time called for more security, PD, and an ambulance. Me and one of the other security guards had to restrain him on the ground until the medics got there. I was sweating like crazy trying to keep him held down. Paramedics came and gave him something to calm him and took over care. That was a fun night. Here's a good recent story for ya. Mid-July working as a paramedic at a festival. Pretty quiet all shift. Finishing up at midnight and getting excited to go party with friends. A call comes in over radios that security is chasing someone down who is in full drug-induced freakout. Start heading that direction in case medical needs to get involved. Arrive on scene to 6 people trying, not very successfully, to hold down this shirtless guy who is thrashing on the ground absolutely losing his mind. Polypharmacy on board. No further info on what he's ingested. Dude and screaming at the top of his lungs bloody murder. The only part of him not being held down is his head. Starts to bash himself face first into the ground while chewing through his lip tongue. I'm now holding his head with all my might while he's trying to bite my fingers. Crappy latex gloves I have immediately tear so I'm covered up to the forearms and this dude's sweat and blood. Managed to get something soft under his face so he can't pancake his face anymore while prepping drugs for sedation. Managed to sedate and strap the guy down to a board where he had a nice little snooze at the med building until whatever he took wore off. Washed off. Clocked off my shift and hit the dance floors. Festivals. Just 2 weekends ago I was at Rockagrass chilling on my tarp listening to the tunes when a lady 10 featuring in front of me starts screaming help over and over. Her 18-mo-old kid was choking, blue in the face, and his eyes were starting to roll back. I was an EMT many moons back, so I flipped him over and gave 4 back blows to clear the watermelon chunk he was choking on. Happy feelings all around. You saved a beautiful and innocent life that day. That's like all the karma you need. You can go rob a bank now. Not a medical person, but this story involves one. Does that count? Beach Fest 17. Last day, my buddy and I were about to leave. We were actually going between campsite and car, packing our crap away in small trips. There's 7 or so of us standing around at this gate waiting to be driven to the car when this hippie looking dude walks up and asks someone for a smoke. One kind guy obliges, and then this dude just starts talking. You know how a stereotypical hippie will start telling a story all slow like, and drags out the word Mariah? He did this. Classic. Nobody asked him to start telling this story. He just went for it. Story goes. From perspective of hippie guy, at festival whatever in the 90s, I was working as a bodyguard. My tent was near the medical tent, so I saw some crap go down. Once, these 2 dudes on LSD, one a skinhead, the other a black guy, were stuck together in a medical tent, both having a bad trip. They were yelling at each other, but they were high, so they kept forgetting why they were so mad. So the yelling was just circles of noise. Eventually, medics come in and try to stabilize both guys. But if you've ever done acid, you'll know that medical questions aren't how you help alleviate a bad trip. That's gotta come from a personal not professional side. So anyway, I see this going down, and I step in and convince the medic to let me take over considering I've done acid plenty of times. So I get in, and I start asking very basic questions to these guys. Where are you from? What's your name? Are you high? The black guy says yeah, I just wanted to listen to Metallica live for the first time in my life. The skinhead responded dude my favorite band is Metallica eventually. These two start getting over their fight and start bonding over their favorite band. It was like magic. In an instant, once these two found something in common, became not only amiable, but friends. And I mean good friends. I saw these two attached at the hip for the rest of the festival, both singing and dancing side by side, watching Metallica headline the festival. It was a surreal moment for me, too. If you've never seen hatred get subdued by pure kindness and love, it's a magical experience for everyone. We all learned a lot that day. I haven't forgotten that hippie guy. He was strung out, but he was a good soul, and he could tell a good frickin' story haha. I went to Lollapalooza 2006 to see Queens of the Stone Age and the Red Hot Chili Peppers when I got heat stroke. Queens was playing right before the Chili Peppers and me, my friend, and his girlfriend decided we wanted to stake out a spot near the front where we would be able to get a good view. They had these fences going up to middle leading to the soundboard, so we staked out spots against it to have something to lean our backs against. We tried to bring in a giant jug of water, but security wouldn't let us. So we each bought one small bottle inside and decided to take turns filling them up at the water fountain. Most of the day was fine, but it was one of the hottest days of the year and it got brutal. Eventually the crowd around us got so big we couldn't walk to refill our water. A bunch of us sat around in a circle talking and this security guard with a ponytail and handlebar mustache walked up to us and said if any of us had any weed to trade he would hook everyone up with waters throughout the rest of the day. We all looked around giving each other, is this guy for real looks? I had weed but no way in heck was I trusting this shady frick. The day went on, but being out under that brutal hot sun was definitely taking its toll on us. We got water sprayed on us occasionally from security people but it was not enough. Kotter was awesome and we were looking forward to the Chili Peppers. About one song into their set my friend's girlfriend was feeling like she was going to faint. So he told a security guard and they pulled her out. A couple of songs more and he looks at me and asks if I'm alright. I didn't want to say anything, but I felt awful, like I was gonna pass out and seeing things like I hadn't slept in days. I tell him I'm fine, but he looks at me and says, dude, no you're not. You should go too and have them look at you. I eventually caved and got pulled out as well. The security guard walked me down the path to basically the front of the stage and then off to the right to a patch of grass with a bunch of sick people. He sat me down and told me to wait. About a minute later some lady comes to check on me. She points a flashlight in my eyes and says, "Watch her take." I told her nothing because I hadn't taken anything. "Come on, watch her take." I told her again, nothing. "I've been in the freaking sun all day." She says then signals over to someone who comes and dumps a bucket of ice water on me and gives me a bottle of water. I just sat there, soaked, for the rest of the concert and then try to find my friend and his girlfriend after the crowd had cleared. I finally find them and they ask me why I'm all wet. I ask why isn't she wet, even though we both got taken away for the same thing. I was the only one that had a bucket of ice water dumped on me. She got a bottle of water and to peacefully enjoy the rest of the concert from the side. Still pisses me off to this day. Have witnessed a number of people seizing up. Really tough to see, wouldn't wish that on anyone. People drinking too much, taking too much. Take your time, be smart, hydrate, know what you're ingesting. Got nothing to prove out there. Moderation is key. I was at EDC Vegas and stopped by the med tent with my boyfriend so they could wrap his shoulder that he hurt in the pool the day before. We were outside waiting to go in and saw 4 guys trying to drag their friend to the tent. The dude was on something I've never seen before. He was jumping up and down aggressively and shaking his head and looked like he was having a seizure. All 4 friends were having an extremely hard time getting him under control. Once he realized he was close to the med tent, he somehow broke free from the 4 guys and booked it back towards main stage. His friends took off after him, along with 2 cops. They managed to get him close enough to the tent and a med person ran out and literally stabbed him with a needle, some tranquilizer, to which he immediately collapsed and finally got carried into the tent. My boyfriend and I just stood there staring at this whole ordeal in shock. I have been to a lot of festivals and have never seen someone behave like that, even on multiple party drugs. I have no idea what he was on, but it was terrifying. The guy wasn't even big, probably 5'7" and not more than 150 pounds. Yet it took 4 friends, 2 cops, and a tranquilizer injection to make him stop. Keep in mind this was like 2 hours into the festival on the first day. Probably got slipped PCP honestly. Actual festival M's worker here. In brief, we get tons of crazy stories and they become routine. But the first I remember was the guy who was found naked but for his sunglasses running around Bonnaroo, attempting to, non-violently, evade M's. He came in restrained to a backboard, equally confused, energetic, and friendly. Managed to flip himself and the board off of a cot, talked to all the other patients, etc. Woke up unaware that he was naked. We'd covered him up, obviously, with no memories of the night before or where we left his clothes. Sent him on his way with his sunglasses and a blanket. Shout out goes to the young lady who did the same but was covered in only glitter and was absolutely sure we were aliens. Tried unsuccessfully to climb a fence before getting a sedative to the butt. Actually M's at a music festival here. Definitely not the craziest thing, but it was one of my favorite calls I've been on because no one got hurt and I was brand new. Somebody calls me over because some old guy is having a heart attack. Immediately my fresh out of school brain leaps into action and walks over to this older guy. He doesn't seem to be in any apparent distress, but he says he's dizzy. Going through all my textbook questions, I eventually land on what he last ate, as he tells me it was the chocolate cake that was being passed around. His eyes go wide and he stammers, "Am I high?" Yes you are. I haven't been high for 40 years. I feel like such a square. It was just so fun to watch the realization come over him and to be there while he decided to make the best of an unexpected trip. Paramedic here. Was working standby at an EDM type concert, rave. End of the night I had to wrestle a gay dude wearing only a jockstrap and butterfly wings out of a water fountain. Some bad XTC was going around. Must have been cut with an upper or bath salt type deal, as I was working with a whole bunch of insecure dudes that didn't want to catch the gay. They elected on me, the queer dude, to get this guy out. 4th of July festival. We get a call for a fight. No lights or sirens needed except to disperse the crowd a bit. On the way we get upgraded and police are asked to join us. Unfortunately they're currently dealing with a higher graded call. Just before we arrive we're informed that one of the fighters has bitten 2 people and is screaming that he has Hep C. This is very serious. So on the way over, stuck in 4th of July traffic we run into some local cops who join us on our way. Food smells good. Music is fun. We arrive on scene. First thing we see is a big dude hunched over by some trash cans huddled over by 3 women. I didn't see anyone else out of the normal at first. We approach and ask how he's doing. Says something along the lines of "that guy attacked me. He's got Hep C." We turn around and see a particularly sweaty dude in a wife beater, a pair of what could best be described as triangular denim, jean shorts and lastly a stained pair of boxers. Of course these were basically fully exposed. As we walk up to this upstanding citizen he makes a break for it and our lovely officers in tow join him until they all make it to the ground. This is sadly in front of many young'uns and elderly folk just trying to enjoy the music and fireworks. Once on the ground he gives up and his girlfriend shows up crying asking what's happening, what we're doing, etc. We ask him about the altercation and if he has Hep C. He's unclear on the disease, but very clear that the other guy started it and is completely at fault. After transporting the 2 we got word that the biter did have Hep C and a while later that the bitten was lucky enough not to have contacted it. Guy sitting in a chair out in the middle of a field. Told me he ate a Rice Krispie treat with blue specks in it. Found this out later. Refused to move, get out of the sun. It was at least 100 degrees outside. Thought he would float away. He had a death grip on that folding chair. We finally just picked him and the chair up together. Took him to a medical tent. Sorry, not EMT, but my first year at Okeechobee 2017 I had a chick jump in with our crew on the first day after she left hers cause they were doing hard crap. Security was super lax. She failed to mention until that night that she was diabetic and left her insulin at her old camp. She insisted that she would be fine. We go out and party the first night and had a blast. Woke up the next morning and she was delirious and forcing herself to vomit. WTF. I asked if she needed to go to the medical tent, which was a 5-minute walk, but she refused. Luckily some volunteers were passing in a gator and asked if she needed help. I told them her problem and they took her to the medical tent and I told them I'd come check on her in an hour or so. I knew she was in good hands and I didn't want to miss out on some of my favorite sets. Sorry if it seems selfish. Later on I go to the tent and what do you know, she had freaking vanished along with the crew that picked her up. I ask the workers that are there where TF she is and describe her, but no one has seen anything. Crap, we basically lost her and didn't hear about her the entire night. I woke up early the next morning groggy after a night of fun and used the pisser about 200 meters straight down from our camp. As I'm walking back I see 2 cops and 2 older women standing at my camp where my dumbass friends left their drugs and paraphernalia out in the open. mainly hallucinogens and whippets. I'm like frick thinking I'm about to get arrested or some crap when one of the cops turns to me and asks, "Are you the silver potato?" To which I replied like a smartass who's asking. They told me I wasn't in trouble or anything, and then something weird happened. The lost chick's mom runs up and hugs me thanking me for saving her girl, and I'm like, the frick? Apparently she was in such terrible condition that they rushed her to the ER and she was in the ICU recovering. I told her it was the crew that saved her, but she wouldn't have it, lol. Her grandmother was the other woman and they were all super nice. We packed up her stuff and gave it to them and they went on their way. I kept in touch with that chick for a while, and not even half a year later it turns out her mother passed away. I wasn't going to ask how, but that was the strangest experience of my life. TLDR. Adopted a chick with diabetes and no insulin. She went to the ICU. Her mom showed up and thanked me. Her mom passed away a few months later. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.